Okay, so what we need to do very quickly, just maybe not even 5 minutes, is you now need to appoint the chairperson of the board and the deputy chairperson of the board. We had several requests that it needs to come from the potential membership and that the board should not elect it. So we've taken that quite seriously and we're going to do that right now. So I think the board members should come to the front, and then I think we're going to keep this quite simple. Let's do it by show of hands. John Gilmore, James Kiwi, and Veronica Genica. Okay, can I ask them to be seated so that you can then vote? I'm going to go... Okay, so we've had one withdrawal and he's supporting James. Okay, so that's a no-brainer. Thank you very much. Congratulations, James. You are the chairperson. Thank you. We are in good hands. Uyiswa is the deputy chair. That was the first vote that we took.
I was told to summarize today or yesterday. I'm not going to summarize yesterday. I'm certainly not going to tell you all the amendments that we made to the Constitution. Those are all there for you to see. So I want to start really by, and I'm going to try not go one by one at all, but across the themes of the different speakers in the course of the morning. So I think the most important thing that most of the speakers spoke about was our vision. And they made some extremely important remarks and inspiring remarks just to remind us of where we are going. Schools as a place of radical freedom and never being places of pain. Never islands of privilege, nor jungles that replicate their surrounds, but rather places of human pride and dignity.
Uncle John reminded us yesterday, each and every one of us that is now going to serve on the board, this is not a place for positions. It's not a place of glamour. It's not a place of power, but it's actually a place where you need to serve to make a significant difference, because our precious children across this country deserve so much better than what they're currently getting. And if you remember James' words yesterday, this is all happening on our watch. Not just the board members and the steering committee, but all of us sitting in this room. It is happening on our watch. And so we need to be we need to do some introspection within ourselves, within our own organizations, and a little bit of reflection going forward as to how we are going to serve the precious children of South Africa, not to serve ourselves.
I'm hoping that the start of this network will help you think through some of these problems and help you think about some of the solutions that you as a collective can work on. At this point, I'm just here to say that the international community is here as well to help you unlock some of these successes from other countries, to help you think through some of the research evidence that you can use in solving some of these problems. And I really hope that we can have a conversation about this in the future as well, where you can celebrate some of your successes as well.
So the session which I attended today was the Partnerships and Collaboration in Order to Achieve Scale session. And what really was fantastic about this session was that despite the fact that it was designed as a panel discussion, and we had some fabulous panelists on the panel, it was in fact conducted as a very inclusive and engaged session where there was an opportunity for every participant in the audience to bring their best thinking to what does it mean, number one, to achieve scale, what is scale? Number two, how best do we go about achieving that? How do we create functional collaborations and partnerships? And what are the elements that really lead towards strong collaborative partnerships being developed? For me, possibly one of the most powerful thoughts coming out of the session was that when we talk about the system, it's easy it's easy to create an us and them concept, and what we really need to embrace is the fact that every person operating within this space is in fact a part of the system, and understanding who the people are within the system, building relationships, building trust and doing real work together is really what will allow us to move into a genuinely collaborative, trust-filled space, and that should be a focus for us.
I want to share some reflections from the Gathering Evidence in Improved Practice Impact panel that we just had. Most of the people in the room felt that evidence is important. We are generating that about our own practice, but as a sector, we need to take it up a notch. It's not just about what we can do to learn about our own programs, but we do need to do enough about our own programs and similar kind of programs that we can inform the industry on a systemic kind of level. The role of NASCEE, some of the ideas that were shared for the role of NASCEE, and that means the members in NASCEE, is to think about ways of building capacity. So how do we get the people in the network that have capacity to build evidence gathering, evidence analysis kind of capacity? How do we get them linked with the people who do not have the capacity? So capacity building is the one thing. The second thing is that NASCEE might have a role almost in a knowledge brokering kind of way, in which they make sure that the evidence that is available gets distributed, gets shared, gets engaged with broadly, and then that there's a flow between what is being produced in the field, what is being produced elsewhere, and where it is being put together. So it might be as simple as just making sure that people share the lessons about what they are doing, what the successes are, and especially what the failures are, but then also about what the challenges are and how we can move forward around those kind of things. There's also a role around connecting people. The NASCEE is a really nice gathering place of people interested in the education field. What we need to make sure is that we build networks with those people that are responsible for doing the research, doing the monitoring, and doing the evaluation out there, so that we can draw in the proper expertise and then enrich the network that we've got available. So it's those three things, and I think it's a good place to start off with after this conference.
The breakaway session was about the use of technology in the social sector, in the non-profit sector. So the key takeaways really was to say, how do we begin to use technology as the social sector in such a way that it can begin to address some of the challenges that we are facing, as well as the new opportunities that technology come with. And the understanding is that technology is not a silver bullet. It's not the answer to all the challenges that we have as a sector. We need to look at some of the issues that we are facing and look at a way of addressing some of those issues, and not expect technology to be the driver or be the change that that will assist us in addressing some of those challenges. And also to look at digital transformation holistically, not just looking at digital transformation from the perspective of technology, but looking at digital transformation from the perspective of looking at how we operate, our operating model, be it our business model, looking at what's working, what's not working, looking at issues of capacity, looking at issues of the processes in such a way that we can then use or embed technology to help us in affecting or impacting the bottom line. Key among the issues was the need to collaborate. Collaboration is important because the introduction of technology or digital transformation is not a project or is not an initiative that the social sector can do on its own. It's about finding willing partners that we can collaborate with in terms of trying to identify the particular opportunities as well as the challenges that we can use the technology to address. Issues of capacity as well. How do we look at capacity, or how do we bolster our capacity in such a way that we can be in a position to effectively implement digital transformative projects. Issues of skills, they also speak to capacity. And issues of using some of the lessons learned from, from institutions or from other initiatives that have already happened, or that have already taken place in the social sector. And also collaborating, expanding our collaboration, our partnerships to outside of the sector, because the whole issue of using technology or digital transformation in the social sector is quite new. But there are other examples and lessons learned that we can, benefit from other sectors. I think for me, those were some of the key takeaways.
So in my session, we were tackling organizational development for stronger social change entities in education. I had a panel of 3 really amazing panelists who are experts in running and having founded organizations. So we discussed issues of sustainability and how that means different things to different organizations, and how organizational development is not static, how organizations needed to be reflective and responsive to the prevailing context. So strategies that may have been useful when the organizations were founded may not necessarily work 5 or 10 years down the line. We also discussed the need to educate funders around how they should be responsive to the needs of organizations. We discussed issues of governance, how NPOs need to make sure that they've got the skills that are required by their operational programs. We also discussed the issue or the need for boards to be self-reflective. One of the things we weren't aware of was how important it is to set expectations up front for board members. So we assume that they always know what needs to get done, and in this case we all realize that perhaps there's a lot of work that needs to get done to get everyone on the same page. We also touched on how impossible it is for many NGOs to develop reserves. So one of the strategies that was suggested was how we should push back on donors not wanting for organizations to use their money to develop reserves. So I suspect for many of the organizations that were in the room, there will be opportunities to learn from one another. So one of the things we don't do as NGOs is to share our failures. We're very willing and quick to share our successes, but not so much from the failures. And I, for one, believe that we learn more from what we don't do right than what we've done correctly.
So I'm saying there's a change that's taking place, there's a movement that's taking place, which needs maybe a different kind of setup and maybe thinking in terms of how people that work in the social economy think about potential sources of funding. But there's a need also for those people who are suppliers of funding to work closer with people who are in the social economy. And it's already starting to happen, especially in the context of impact investing and that kind of thing.
If you have proof of concept, or even if you a volunteer to, not volunteer, but I mean you have some of your own funding, and so you come into the basic education space and say, we are running this program, we believe in it, here's our proof of concept theoretically, and we will pilot it in a few of your schools to develop the proof of concept as a first step. And in that way you get your foot in the door, so to speak, but if your concept is then proven, you're able to extend and look at broadening your impact.
Depending on what you're doing, you actually have an opportunity to unlock multiple sources of money. And actually, the biggest sources of money come from the state. And our deep-rooted view is that private money should be used to unlock and optimize state funding.
Key messages that came through was around collaboration, partnerships, innovation, good business practice within the sector, and then of course key to attract funding is measurement and being able to demonstrate, what the success is or where you've had the impact. So measurement always a very important aspect for any funder who wants to understand how do you measure that impact and how do you then reflect back on that and put that back into your systems and learn from that. So to the audience and to my panel, thank you so very, very much for sharing.
This is not an organization, it's an association. And we're going to have to get this very clear from the beginning that when we talk organization and empire building and CEOs and all that kind of stuff, this is not what this is. This is an association, and we are not going to try and build an empire and have lots of staff and those kind of things. We're going to function like other associations. There will be a small secretariat, and the board will decide who it will be and how it will function, but we are not trying to have a big staff. We are not trying to introduce cost into this. We are trying to manage this in a way that is good for all of us.